Under present forestry guidelines, an old-growth forest is described as decadent, and our policy in British Columbia is to liquidate all the old growth in the province outside of our parks. Don Sluggett is the district manager for the Ministry of Forests.
Well, I think in the past the intent of the government was to replace decadent timber with thrifty, immature timber. And if you're looking at it from strictly a wood production unit, second growth stands will produce more timber than an old growth stand.
Clearcutting is the method of logging used by most companies in British Columbia. Almost all of Kyuquot Sound is destined to be logged. The effects are easily seen near the village of Kyuquot. Mount Paxton, climbing 2,000 feet above sea level, was clear-cut from shoreline to the mountain ridge and down the other side. Other areas nearby look similar. The soil that was once protected by the old-growth canopy has washed away after a few seasons of the heavy rains typical of the West Coast. Like much of this coast, the slopes here are naturally unstable and the soil thin and poor. Without the protection of the forest, soils bake under temperatures that increase by as much as 10 degrees. In the winter, landslides run rampant. The natural water regulator is gone, so streams run wild and silty.
The people that are involved in it don't realize the impact it has on the whole system, because we understand it as I indicated at the beginning that it's a one system. It's not just a forest that they're looking at or they're getting the trees from, but it's a whole system, that total chain reaction. You kill the trees, you kill the side hills, you kill the plants, the herbs in it, and it wrecks the river. And the river starts to wreck the bottom of the ocean. And this is what we have right now.
In the 1950s, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans recorded an average of 2,200 chum salmon in the Artlish River. Forest companies began clear-cutting the Artlish, which is located in the heart of Kyuquot, in 1970. The last recorded fish count in 1987 showed that a mere 200 chum returned to the Artlish, while only a few kilometers away, over 9,000 chum returned to the pristine waters of the Tashish. Jerry Lang is a marine biologist and wilderness tour operator in the Kyuquot area.
Statistically, areas that haven't been disturbed are still producing very good quantities of salmon. Areas that are adjacent are very similar when compared to. The results are catastrophic, that after clear cutting, the salmonid population has dropped enormously, sometimes by 90% or more. Entire stocks have been wiped out.
Growing a managed forest in place of a natural old-growth forest in Kyuquot is not as easy as officials thought it would be. Although logging companies claim they have replanted our forests, not all of the trees actually survive.
Behind me we have Malksop Inlet. The mountain here was logged about 30 years ago. Apparently it's been replanted some 4 times. And as a result, you can see that it hasn't taken. And this should be a strong testimony as to the effect of clear-cut logging or logging practices presently carried out in very extremely exposed areas like this side right here. You have the effects of heavy rain through the winter months, strong winds, and a very, very thin soil mass, which contributes to this type of erosion. You don't give the plants a chance to root, to take hold, and you have slides like that.
Forestry has been practiced with such an intensity, and so extensively that we have wrought a lot of changes to the forest ecosystem that no one really wanted, and have had disastrous effects in some cases, in terms of slope failures, in terms of regeneration problems, in terms of even in places where there were trees left, the trees blowing down and whole islands being without anything left.
If the old-growth forests remaining in Kyuquot are clear-cut, there are few places for the plants and animals to find a similar habitat. Environmentalists like Vicky Husband of the Sierra Club think present logging practices must change.
I think every British Columbian, every Canadian should be totally ashamed of the kind of logging practices that we see in the Kyuquot area. I guess in flying over the area and also traveling by truck in behind, I'm frankly appalled by what I see. I think there's no excuse. And I guess what I find really disturbing is that although there's a veneer of saying, yes, we've changed in the past, yes, we were bad in the past, but now we're good and we're doing a good job, you travel in behind the scenes at Kyuquot, in behind Mount Paxton, where logging is still going on. You travel to the Ukinnish River, a major salmon river. They're cutting down to both sides of the salmon river.
The Sierra Club of Western Canada and local groups like Keeps believe we need to rethink our present environmental policies. Polls show that the majority of Canadians agree. 64% stated that the health of our environment was more important than the state of the economy. Sam Kara has been working with Keeps to change the present logging practices in Kyuquot.
The community couldn't stand it anymore because what we were getting is our mountains logged on the coast here, followed by terrible erosion and slides, you know, and then mud in the rivers and stuff. So the community got together and formed Keeps, which stands for Kyuquot Economic and Environmental Protection Society. So we're not necessarily against logging, but we were definitely against the practices that were being allowed to happen here.
Forest management means maintaining healthy forest sites, especially the soil base, which will support the next generation of trees. In areas where clear-cut logging will result in soils washing into our oceans and streams, removal of the forest cover contradicts the principles of sustainable development. In order to implement sustainable development, the forest industry's interests cannot override other economic and ecological interests, such as fisheries or tourism. Alternatives to clear-cutting do exist. We can live with and use the forest in ways that minimize environmental impact, without losing jobs. Peter Becker with the Ministry of Tourism in British Columbia was impressed by the variety of recreational activities available in the Kyuquot area.
You can do whatever you want here, just about. If you have an inclination to do a certain activity, chances are you can find a place to do it here in a very, very nice setting.
What we do in Kyuquot and how we do it is up to us. British Columbians have asked their government to rethink its plans in areas like South Moresby and Carmanah. Because of telephone calls, letters, and telegrams, these places still exist, but only because thousands of Canadians insisted that these wilderness areas are worth keeping and voiced their concern. At present rates of logging, the best of British Columbia's coastal old-growth rainforest will be cut in the next 15 years. While much of the Kyuquot Sound area has been logged, the most spectacular areas can still remain intact. Time is running short for BC's old-growth rainforests and Kyuquot Sound.